right. All right. Hey, Aski. How's it going? How are thou? How are thee? Thou? Thus you are. Hey, brother, Master Babshimizo. Krasgar, what is good? So today, I was thinking I should, for those who missed it yesterday, let me actually switch off Photoshop, just so I don't show anything I shouldn't show, just in case, you know. For those who missed it yesterday, I streamed while I did the orthographics for the characters yesterday, before we were watching the PlayStation 5 reveal. So I've kind of been, so I made the orthographics, some posing, and so on. So today I was thinking I'll continue doing orthographics actually on the warm-up for the sake of legacy. Hey Captain Bose, how's it going? V is fine. Let's see, I'm okay. Okay. Home screaming action going on. Anyways. So yesterday's VOD, I was listening to music obviously and throwing out some orthographics. So I thought, why not show it on the warm-up? Actually, that's a stupid idea. I'm gonna have to adapt this character to the orthographics. And I have to kind of make it up because it's posed in a way where it's hard to see the true diagonals and through true parallels or lines up, you know. So if I draw a line there, you know, it's easier to see where it, even though this leg is posed, you can kind of suss out where the line is. Same for this guy, but on this guy he's kind of skewed in perspective, so I have to make it up a bit. Hey Cosmoverse, how's it going? Zeolin, what up? So I'll do this kind of a straightforward orthographic. What's fun with orthographics for me is you're gonna have to try to design the back of shapes, the overall relationship of shapes, and it's a sign of a good design if you can draw it without really issues when you are, for example, if I would do the back view of the troll and I start seeing like alignment issues with or not maybe a troll, but alignment issues with, let's say, something on their back or a weapon, or, you know, and you're starting to understand, oh shit, this doesn't make sense in 3D space. And instead of drawing the orthographic incorrect, you should consider what you've drawn and adjust it. Potentially have to adjust it so that the actual design makes sense in 3D space, rather than making the orthographics read wrong. Because it's not so much about cheating as in having a solid three-dimensional understanding of the character. Because there's so many orthographics I've seen also where they've taken shortcuts, and some of those shortcuts is, for example, they just copy the front view and add it as a back view and just change some stuff, yet all the details, all the proportions are the same. Oh shit, I haven't put on the timer. And they're so obvious when that's done. It's like mirrored. It's boring. So one fun thing with like the orthographics here, for example, is that I copy the silhouette over, and a lot of problems what a lot of people make or don't think about is this, for example. The belt is obviously, if we look at the cylinder would be like this, right? It would be tilted down because it's on her hip, right? And she's arcing butt backwards, which means the belt is tilted forward. Also from the perspective point, horizon line is here probably, right? And we are seeing the ellipse like that. So if we would then draw the back of that, the ellipse should be up there, right? So in this instance, I put it up there. So the ellipse is like that, right? So that means that the other side of the cylinder, we need to see it reversed. If it's going to be correct, we're going to have to, rotate the camera and look at it from that way, which means we will see this part more and not this part. Where we're looking here, we're seeing this part, not that part. Pelvic tilt. Hey Henrik, how's it going? Welcome back, man. What up? Yeah, so that's the kind of basis of this way of doing orthographics. Also, that you gotta respect the design. You have to make sure that your design comes across correct. And like now, for example, there isn't really a straight leg. But what you could do, which I've done a few times in my career, is you when it's posed like this, more to an extreme extent, you can rotate, so you get more of an approximate proportion. So now at least on this one you can start mapping out, like, okay, here somewhere should be the rib cage, here should be the belly button approximately, there should be the somewhere around there should be the underside of the belly, and then there approximately should be the leg, and the rest we have to make up. Right, so that's the kind of things you got to do if the pose is too extreme. So that you can map out approximately. So what I'm doing now, as there isn't a back view anymore, or yet, I'll have the liberty to draw it. What gets me is how the feet points up. Yeah, that's the only problem. That's the only problem. That you gotta with feet, here you can see I literally just took like 10 seconds to blot out the feet, but you gotta break the perspective, or if you copy the back view, you have to break the painting, and you have to do your own solution there. So what I want to do with this design is have them feel like fat kids, you know, like fat toddlers. You know how, you know, with that big old fat belly, you know, I want that to really come across on this character, and you can kind of get it on the painting, but with the orthographics, you have an extra opportunity to indicate mass and form by shifting the forms and weight of the character. Like, so here, for example, in this instance, you can easily, depending on how I draw the body and how I align the feet and legs, you can start getting the sense of weight. Right, so if this is the center line, you can see how it's more pudgy, right? More heavier forward. And that's those kind of subtle things in a design that you really need to consider, and it's up to you to define when you're doing the orthographics, because the 3D artist, if they're skilled, they will do that themselves. But if they outsource, for example, the 3D artist to some other country or to some other artist, they're not going to have that ability to interpret. Because what happens most of the times is when you send off an orthographic to be modeled, they are extremely literal with what's there. So you won't have the opportunity to assume they'll be able to interpret it correctly. Because for example, there's a huge the industry uses a lot of cheap Asian artists, because they work hard and you pay less, and they have a lot of technically good artists, right? They're very skilled in that sense, so that whatever you throw at them, they can churn out for a cheap cost rather quick, up to spec, right? But if you, for example, what happens if you ask a Chinese outsourcing studio that does your 3D, just if you ask them to come up with, you know, fill the gaps, they will lean on, first of all, what they think you want, and secondly, they will most likely lean on quite kind of Asian influenced media cues, if you may. You know, whatever's popular over there isn't really popular over here to the same extent, and vice versa. And it's a well-known problem with the market, that they have a hard time, what's it called, having success with the exact same Eastern recipe as Western recipe, right? So and the same for West has a really hard time hitting big in the markets in the East, and the East has a hard time hitting big in the markets in the West. Some exceptions like Final Fantasy, obviously, but they've successfully bridged the two. And that's quite evident, you know. But there's a lot of games that are just too Eastern sometimes, that people here don't really relate to or understand to the same extent, because there's different not social cues, but historical cues in terms of what's norm, right? So when you see you know, let's say there's this really hilarious new meme where it's a guy who's extremely chiseled, like he's extremely trained. You can see every muscle on his body, right? And then he has a long wig on and makeup, and the meme is like every man in Castlevania, and like that aspect is so like true, like in a lot of Eastern depiction of men, they are these kind of in between. They're very manly physically at places, and then at other places they're extremely feminine. Like they usually have like more makeup on and more kind of androgynous faces. Where, for example, the Western cues are like a more rugged, wild, untamed, right? That's like the man stereotype in the West, where in Asia it's not like the stereotype, right? Rollermaster, yeah, exactly. So the problem there is like how do you design the, you know, what are the cues that you're going to use to communicate the design? And you can't really have universal cues because everyone is coming from a different place in life. Black Sable, yeah, this, I don't know, this is just quarantine. But it does bring an interesting thing to the table, you know, these cultural differences, and they do have a huge part in the industry, especially if, like I said, if you use outsourcing studios and letting them come up with the gaps in your design, and if you let them interpret what's missing, or, you know, fill the gaps of, you would trust a skilled 3D artist to help you out, make your work better, right? But if you let those Asian artists make your work better, but by helping fill the gap, you might get something you didn't ask for, that's extremely wrong for the target you're working towards, right? So that's why with orthographics and design, if you design something, it's up to you to define all the parameters and plug all the gaps in the design so that there's no room for interpretation. And usually when you see a bad design is that when there's, first of all, a gap in knowledge in the designer, and then the next step is that they give it to someone else that maybe is culturally different, and then they interpret it, and then you get it back and it's a little bit different, a little bit further away from what you would have liked. Hey Fuxia, how's it going? So that's the interesting part of it, right? That you gotta um, calculate these risks, and you have to limit the amount of interpretation. Unless you have a really skilled 3D artist that's gonna do the work, that you worked with before, that will interpret what you're doing the right way, right? Whereas this, you pay them a lot of money and you wait a month to get the work, and then the work is so different from what you actually needed, and then what are you gonna do? Hey narrator, how's it going? Hey Rolomancer. Um, like I wrote yesterday in the chat, I heard from the devs of Horizon 2 that because I did so much work for them back many years ago, when I defined a world for them, they hired me for a while, and I started coming up with ideas and kind of world build for them. That I gave them so much work that they could use, that they used for the sequel as well. And I could spot some of the stuff in Horizon 2, which I know I drew, and I know I explored. And one part of that is the huge discs you could see in the background, like these satellite dishes, and the flying dinosaurs. I didn't design the flying dinosaurs, but I designed around it, what goes with it, and also the diving, and kind of like the mammoth people, but not really. I had a little bit different, but I assume that that's what they're gonna do with where I took the idea. But obviously, like I mentioned about the orthographic, the whole interpretation thing, and you hand something over, and they will run with it, and they will funnel it, and they will interpret it, right? So that's what's happened as well in a lot of these pre-production stuff, is that you try to define as much as possible, and then you hand it to them, and then they'll do whatever they want with it. And I think that's what's happened here, is right. I gave them an idea, and I gave them a world direction, and then I walked away, right. And then they ran with it, and they interpreted it, and they ran it through their own filters and so on. So my original idea is slightly different from those mammoth people, but I think that they're going to do the same thing because it was hinted. And there is a lot more. I think if they're going to the west, there should be some other really, really cool elements in there. I'm hoping that they included. The last time I talked to the devs, they said that they would use, so we'll see. Hey Turquoise, how's it going? Rollermaster, MTG. I've done work for MTG as well. Yet I'm not the. Actually, I can show. It's the gingerbread trailer. I designed a lot of things for that gingerbread. For Axis. I designed the gingerbread people. I did a lot of key art for the table and scenes. It's a hilarious trailer. It was the first time ever I actually designed not only the back view of a cookie, but the side view of a cookie, which in reality was hilarious. So I had to do orthographics like I'm doing now for a cookie. So the side was literally, like side of the cookie, here's the eyes, here's the icing for the mouth, here's the buttons. But, as they had to model it, I had to design it, so there's no room for interpretation. So it was quite funny, actually, to have to do an orthographic for a cookie. But now, someone's got to do it. Rollermaster, you think you could hide a side view of a cookie? Have you tried it? It's not that easy, actually. There's actually a lot of measuring, because you can't, like I said, you can't have this over there and on the side view it's there, and then back view it's over here. So it has to be exact. It is quite tricky though, because let's say the cookie, when a cookie is like this, you can see the cookie, right? But when the cookie is like that, those things have to line up as well with that. So there's a lot, there's stuff that can go wrong. Stupid stuff that can go wrong. Turquoise. Yeah, they're gonna have I'm not sure about the hands. If it's gonna be hands or more like a claw. I think I want a more simple hand. So I'm gonna reduce the amount of fingers, so it's just 3 digits. But yeah, they are gonna have hands on their tails. And one thing that's always you have to do with orthographics is if you have done it like this, right, and you measured and you want to liquefy the form, if I liquefy the form like that, it's not going to align anymore. So if you want to liquefy, you have to liquefy straight to the sides. Because what you don't want to do is start liquefying it wonky. So certain things you can nudge the other way, but yeah. And I've done other stuff for Magic the Gathering as well, but yeah, this was one of the things that came to mind. Yeah, so these are the gingerbread that I talked about. I can't play it because it's gonna get a copyright strike. But yeah, I designed these and did orthographics for them, and hilarious. Ritas, nice. That skills right there. So like this, for example, like I want to have a better form, and I don't want to jeopardize the vertical placement. So if I want to have a better form, I can skew it, but it has to remain proportionally correct. Granted, doing orthographics there's no flashy aspect to it, right? It is the necessary pain of the industry. If, as a designer, because you're gonna have to communicate your design, right, to a team of a couple of hundred people. So it's never really exciting as coming up with a cool character or making a big gun, or But the fact is, it has to be done, and I think what a lot of more experienced artists or studios do, which is they hand off the orthographic work to interns, is one, it's a good to know, so it's great that the interns gets to do it, right, so that they learn it the hard way. But you as a designer, you can't neglect to have a really solid understanding of your designs. So when I see like senior artists hand over on orthographic, I really hope that they do them as well. Hey, Synthesis, how's it going? Because it's too easy to, like I said, interpret a design wrong. So if you rely on your intern to interpret your design in 3D space correctly, chances are you're gonna have to, run it back to the intern, make corrections, while you as a designer might feel the need actually to alter a design so it reads better in 3D space, because if you don't, it can come off boring and wrong. So it relies on the lead or this senior to know what they're doing and how to design the right way, and come up with shapes that are interesting in more than one view, not as in opinion view, but camera views. And that's something not a lot of people understand, that as a designer, as a concept artist, you have to do these things as well. You have to be able to translate and communicate a design to another person, and that's where the trick comes, where good designers make a mark for themselves. Is not only do they have artistic ability to design something really, really cool that looks great and has great shapes and colors and readability and character and personality and all these things, but also having the understanding that when they're designing, the designing will translate really well. It will come off in 3D really, really well, because of the understanding of how the shapes correlate to each other, the proportions, that perhaps maybe a shape isn't that dramatic from the front view, but extremely dramatic from the side view. And in the front view, you see this hypothetical shape, and you're not very overly impressed by it until the camera turns, right? So there's all these other aspects in a design that you have to consider, where a lot of beginning designers make a mistake of only designing as a two-dimensional projection from the front, and when they turn, the design breaks. It doesn't look that interesting. Rollermaster, yeah, absolutely, and that's why, and that is exactly the reason why I think, as a concept artist, you should learn to sculpt. Because when you're sculpting something and you turn the camera, you will make adjustments, because you're gonna see, all right, it's not working that well. And usually what happens is when you're starting to sculpt, you're sculpting like you think in 2D. And that will always result in a strange model. Like it doesn't make sense when you turn the camera. And that's a sign that you don't have a strong enough sense of 3D space in how you do art. Is that you've practiced, for example, as an example, like a line artist would draw a lot of stylized things. But if they have to sculpt it, how would you sculpt the stylized things? It's absolutely okay that happens when the world or the character is in a stylized representation. But if you're going to make it into 3D with style, you're going to have to interpret the style into a three-dimensional space. And the trick is to how do you find a solution to that three-dimensional interpretation, which is the tricky part, and which your ability to design comes into play, and understanding of it. So if you're going to sculpt that, you're going to quickly realize what shortcuts you're taking and which works and doesn't work. And maybe you can come up with a way that interprets it the right way, or you need to make adjustments on the fly. Which is, it's fair. But if you don't have that understanding, you won't be able to understand the moves you got to make in order for it to work. And that's why we try to learn all aspects of it as a concept artist. Where's the leak? Oh, there. Captain Bosa never turned my canvas? No. Do you do design in some mid-angle as well? If need be, yeah, absolutely. The thing is, with all these things, right, the more you think about the design, the more you try to learn about how the design works and what shapes works in three-dimensional space and all these things, right, the more you're gonna understand it. And if you don't ever think about it in three-dimensional space and shapes, you will never fully grasp it, right? So, as an example, the more you think about things, the less you need to define them for someone else in that sense. So for me, for example, when I do designs, I think about them in all manners of perspective, so that I just don't hand off a design and having a two-dimensional front view projection of the design. If I do a design like that, I'm actually thinking about, okay, what happens when the camera turns? What do the players see when the camera turns? What shapes looks cool when the camera turns? And for the longest time, the kind of spiky shoulder pads was a big trend to do, right? Like spikes going up, pointy, elven-like shoulder pads, right? And everyone was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool," consensually agreeing that that's great, right? But then they saw the characters turn in 3D space, and it looks like they have milk cartons on the shoulders, and it looks ridiculous, right? It doesn't look cool as it does from the front view. So people started to understand, all right, what we got to do is actually design the shoulders in perspective or in a 3D space so that it doesn't look as stupid as it does when they when they turn in perspective. Versus when it's almost like razor thin shoulder pads and they turn, and it's like, oh, this concept artists have no idea what their design looks like from the side. Sad, sad, but true. And that's like a clear sign of a good designer is when they understand this aspect and think about this aspect and make design decisions not only from a kind of projected two-dimensional mindset, but from a 3D dimensional aspect to their two-dimensional design from the front. Right, so that some design has to be done with the idea of what happens when the camera is turned. And a lot of people don't do that. Synthesis. It depends on what you want to aim your portfolio for. I think being a generalist will only land you generalist work. I think it's always good to specialize. So if, let's say, you have 10 marbles, put 8 of them into what you love, and then every month you take 2 of them and put them in something that will add value to the other 8, right? But if you put 1 marble in each category every month, your evolution is going to be extremely slow. But you're going to have 10 different categories that you can do work in, right? But you're never really like stellar in one of them. So the idea is find out what you love and what you don't mind doing at all. Like orthographics, I'm absolutely fine with doing orthographics. I have zero qualms with doing an orthographic of my design. I love it. But if you talk to a lot of concept artists, like, do you do orthographics? They're like, oh, they like get physical pain of the thought of doing an orthographic, and rest assured they're not going to have orthographics in their portfolio because they don't want to do them. But I don't mind doing orthographics because it gives me an ability to design even further, and I love designing, so I don't mind it. So if you should do things you don't want to do, so if I pay you money to do what you hate, do you do it just for the hate of it or for the money of it? And why would you include that? Like, I don't want to go clean toilets in a hospital, for example. But if I would get money for it, I would like, no. So whenever, like, if someone asks, like, who want to do some jobs, I'm not going to be like, I can go clean toilets in the hospital. I don't want to do that. So I don't think you should include stuff in your portfolio either that you hate. But if you include things that you can do but it's not like your love, you can include some of it in case, like, I don't mind doing it for money, I can do it, sure. So it's something to consider, but you should mainly put what you love doing in your portfolio and specialize in it. Nice hairband? Oh, on my head? Oh, no, it's just too long. Rollermaster, yeah. Human scale is extremely weird sensation of seeing the design in a tangible space. Alright, let's find someone to raid. Who to raid? Maybe some team members. He's modeling Mac's hand. Oh, he's doing some strange glass modeling. Okay, let's rate a 3D artist. He has a camera on as well. Let's just see this correctly. All right. Have a great day, everyone. See you tomorrow morning. Not at all, because it's Friday, so Monday, study Monday. I will stream on Sunday. Actually, no. I will announce the winner of Unreal Bjorn 3 on Monday stream. On Monday stream, at the end of Monday stream, I will announce the winner of Unreal Bjorn 3. Ooh. Exciting. Exciting. So make sure you tell everyone that's involved. It's not going to be on Sunday, but Monday at the end of the stream on Monday. Hype, hype, hype. Crazy. All right. Wicked. We're going to do the raid, outro, tools. See you Monday morning. Goodbye.